Mentioned the nations with coastlines in the Arctic are members of the Arctic Council, and this meeting comes as the United States begins its 2-year chairmanship of the group. We wanted to get a sense of what this meeting means from a diplomatic standpoint. I spoke about that with Kenneth Yalowitz, a career U.S. Foreign Service officer and former ambassador to Belarus and Georgia.
No, well, there's always, at a meeting like this, there's always symbolism. When I was a diplomat, as an ambassador, these events we would call action-forcing events. And there's something symbolic about bringing all these people together. And the whole idea is to give a real strong forward thrust to these climate change negotiations, later this year. So as I say, it's a little bit of both, but there is definitely a very substantive element to this meeting.
And President Obama is the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Arctic. Your thoughts on that and the significance of it?
I think it's wonderful. I have been working with a number of others, to call attention to the difficulties of climate change, the increasing water levels, these crazy changes in temperature. And the Arctic is really the canary in the coal mine. It's where these things are felt first. The impacts of all of these things are being felt further and further south. For example, South Pacific Islands, some of them are getting inundated now because of the rising, sea levels. The warming temperatures are also contributing to these wild, erratic weather patterns that we're having.
Ambassador, of course, as ice melts, opportunities for oil exploration open, Shell already there, potential for development, as well as environmental catastrophe.
Yes. You're pointing to a very difficult aspect about the Arctic. One, is that we want to preserve it, as clean, environmentally sound, pristine as possible. On the other hand, there are riches of oil and gas, and there are also people, living there. And you have to find that balance between protecting the environment to the maximum extent possible, dealing with oil spills, but at the same time, the state of Alaska, for example, is very heavily dependent on oil revenues. And you need to develop, these resources in a very responsible, clean, and transparent way. Does it satisfy all the environmentalists? No. Is it a responsible way to try to balance competing interests? Yes.
And finally, Ambassador, what do you want to come out of this conference? You know the issues, you know the challenges, and you know the politics involved. What do you want to come out of this conference going
What
on
I
in
want
Alaska?
to see is a real step forward in terms of the climate change meeting later this year in Paris. The U.S. has done some important things unilaterally. I think China is doing things, but I think we want to bring all countries, together. And I think the purpose of this conference is to give that kind of international push, to have the United States, Russia, Canada, the European Union, all these various countries that are interested in the Arctic, there. And I think the Chinese are represented as well. Giving a push to climate change, I think, is crucially important. And as I say, the second message is one that the Arctic is so important because of the problems of climate change that we have to work together. We cannot let this, the geopolitics intrude more. It already has, as I say, to a certain extent. But the idea is to demonstrate by all these people sitting around a table that we have more in common than divides us.
We'll leave it at that. Ambassador Ken Yalowitz, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.